welcome back to the Awkward Chronicles. My name is Larissa, and today we're going to be discussing my winter TBR. So I know we have our monthly TBR and then our yearly TBR, books we'd like to read in whatever year. But I am also like a mood reader, but I'm also a seasonal mood reader. And with that is a challenge in and of itself. Throughout certain seasons, I have a tendency to want to read more of a certain genre or a certain style of book. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So this is my winter TBR. Even though we are having a beautiful week here in Minnesota, it is high 50s and 60s, and it is amazing.
But winter is coming,
unfortunately, and I gotta be ready. I gotta have my winter TBR kind of mapped out. So I have a lot of series that I'd like to read and some standalones. And the main style or genres that I really like to read, always romance, first and foremost. I definitely trend a lot more towards fantasy as well as historical fiction too. So let's do the series first. And this is very exciting. The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer is the second book in the the Vancouver Storms series. And the first book is Behind the Net, which I read in my Kindle Unlimited reading vlog. And I was obsessed with it. And I am so excited to read The Fake Out. It's a hockey romance. And I think this one is enemies to lovers, potentially fake dating. I'm not really 100% sure on that one. But I believe it's enemies to lovers. I actually didn't even look at the synopsis. I just saw that she was coming out with the second book in the Vancouver series. And I said, want to read, put it on my TBR. Always a fan of sports romances, but hockey romance in the winter hits different. Big fan. So I always try to like sneak a little hockey romance in there. I think it comes out in December. I could be wrong. I don't really write down the details. I just know it's going to be happening. And then the second book that I am planning on reading, this one is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. This one does come out, I do know when, on February 13th. So that will definitely be a book that I do plan to read this winter because I have to. It is the last book I think we're getting with BJ and Magnolia's point of view. And hopefully it will not leave me in shambles like every one of her books does. We have Loathe to Love You by Ellie Hazelwood. This is a novella bind up, and you know, the only reason I did is because I think the second novella takes place in the winter. So I've been like waiting to read this all in the winter, which is just so silly. But yeah, this is, like I said, 3 novellas, and I think they are all enemies to lovers, so which would make sense. The first one is Under the Roof, and the second is Stuck With You, and the last is Below Zero. Silly goofy, and I love Ellie Hazelwood's writing. I really need to take this sticker off because that is very much bothering me a lot. But this just seems like, you know, let's curl up by the fireplace and just read a quick little novella here and there. And then the next series that I do plan to read this winter is the Dreamland Billionaire series. The first one is The Fine Print. The second is Terms and Conditions. And the third is The Final Offer. And then I also do plan to read Love Redesigned. I haven't gotten that one yet, so I think it takes place in this universe, just not with these characters. This is pretty much like Disney World for adults, so I've heard. And some of them are like Grumpy Sunshine, and I think they are all dual POV, which I'm a big fan of. And like the covers are like a cool tone, like they're not flashy or anything. They most likely do take place in warmer months, but for some reason in my head, because of the way they look, they just look like winter books to me. And you can't change my mind about that. And then the next book that I would like to read is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I believe this is regarding a hockey team in Alaska, and there's a huge scandal attached with it. So if you do plan to read that, check the trigger warnings. I love Frederick Bachman's writing. I have read A Man Called Uwe and Anxious People by him and have loved both of those books. I would love to see what other works. I mean, Beartown has been out for years at this point now. And again, Alaska hockey team, it speaks winter time. Get into some fantasy. Obviously, as I've been saying for months and months now. Crescent City. The only reason well, no, it's not the only reason, but one of the reasons that I'm holding out reading this in the winter is because the third book comes out at the end of January, and I wanted to space them out to where I wouldn't have to wait so long to wait on the third one. So that way everything is still pretty fresh, because I've heard Crescent City is very heavily fantasy based, so it's a little bit more world building and understanding structures from what I understand. I just hear that people get confused with this one. In order to save myself from having to like remember everything, I wanted to wait as close to release date of the third one. And also, can we figure it out? I know that they are reprinting one of them, or all of them, so they're all the same height, but man, this angers me. I'll be reading the whole Crescent City trilogy, if it's a trilogy, or at least the 3 books that will be out eventually this winter. Ledge by Stacey McEwen. Yes, I believe that's how she says her name. And Chasm. Chasm is also out now, but I wanted to read Ledge, and I do plan on reading Chasm. I just haven't ordered it yet. It's going to be a trilogy. There's frost, so therefore winter. In a place known as the Ledge, a civilization is trapped by a vast chasm and sheer mountain face. Rations are small, living is tough, and there is no way to escape without befalling a deathly drop. What's more, every season, the people must present themselves as a human sacrifice to the Glacians, mysterious winged creatures who reside beyond the Ledge. And surprisingly, I have not hopped on the Jennifer Lynn Barnes train, so I'm going to start off reading the Inheritance Games by her, and then probably the Naturals in the spring, summer, because everybody raves about them, and I also want to rave about them. It takes place in a mansion, kind of like giving darker vibes and figuring out puzzles and mysteries, and in my head, winter. I want to start the Red Rising series because everybody loves this series, and I want to love it too. And I've been meaning to get into this for quite a while. Is this the one where it's like the first 3 were the original 3 and then they continued on? I've heard it's a little confusing. Okay, his wife is taken, his people enslaved, driven by a longing for justice and the memory of lost love. Darrow will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if he must become one of them to do so. Okay, I think it's like a caste system. We'll find out. Lastly, for the series portion of this, is Murtaugh by Christopher Paolini. Whew, I really messed that one up. And it is the 5th book in the Inheritance cycle, which is like Aragon in that series. And I did not realize he was coming out with this. It has been so long since I have read Aragon or any of the books in that series, and I was obsessed with that when they first came out. Like, I was on top of it. Here we are again, I guess, many years later, going to read Murtaugh. I have no idea if it's the same characters or anything. That name rings a bell, so I probably have to I might listen to the other books just as a refresher, because that's a magic system, and yeah, all I remember is Brazinger, and that's like fire or something. That was like the first book where like dragons had a personality, but I really like how Fourth Wing has been writing their dragons, so they definitely took notes. Now let's get into the standalone portion of our TBR. I'm so excited. So this is where a few historical fiction come into play, and that would be, oh, let's start with this one. Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. And I loved this movie that is based off, I mean, the book is based off of that, which is based off of a true story. And I just want to see how it compares. Oh my gosh, it's kind of small writing. I just want to see how it compares. I absolutely loved this movie. I think it is a very, very important part of history. I highly recommend the movie, at least. Women empowerment as well as women of color empowerment, and I love that. The Family by Naomi Kropitsky. This book has just been on my TBR. I got it. It's one of the first books I got from Book of the Month, and I have yet to read it. And I believe it's about the wives of mobsters in way back in the day, potentially. I honestly could be making that up. I have no clue what it's about, but it's giving historical fiction, wives of mobsters, and that's what I'm going to pretend that it is. Looking for Alaska by John Green. And look, he has a medal for this one, and I love John Green. So we need to read this one, and I know people rave about Looking for Alaska. And therefore, I want to be a part of that, because I am a basic bee that wants to be in the know of certain things, even though this is an older book. No idea what it's about. Before, Miles Pudge Halter's whole existence has been one big non-event, and his obsession with famous last words has only made him crave the great perhaps. He heads off to the sometimes crazy, possibly unstable, and anything but boring world of Culver Creek boarding school, and his life becomes the opposite of safe, because down the hall in Alaska Young is Alaska Young. The gorgeous, clever, funny, sexy, self-destructive, screwed up, and utterly fascinating Alaska Young, who is an event unto herself. She pulls Pudge into her world, launches him into the great perhaps, and steals his heart. This is nothing what I thought it was going to be. I thought a kid traveled to Alaska. I'm so wrong. How have I heard nothing about this book, but everybody loves this book? The next book up is The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. It's giving Valentine's Day. I know it's about like two opposing figures, and like they work for people who renovate houses or something. And that's all I know about that. But it's giving Valentine's Day, so I must read it in February at some point. The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. A woman risks everything to end her family's centuries-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love in this mesmerizing novel from the best-selling author of Spells for Forgetting. It's giving kind of like summer fall, but at the same time, I would like to read it sooner because I just got this one a couple months ago and I was going to read it earlier and I didn't, and I feel like this season is the time to read it. Then the last book that I do plan to read this winter is Babel by R.F. Kuang. And this is about words and how they do things. Oh, and it's also historical fiction. Historical fiction fantasy. How fitting. And this is Robin Swift, orphaned by Cholera in Canton, is brought to London by the mysterious Professor Lovell. I know I'm pronouncing all these wrong, and you know, we're just gonna deal with it. There, Robin trains for years in Latin, ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for the day he'll enroll in Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. The tower and its students are the world's center for translation and, more importantly, magic. Silverworking, the art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation using enchanted silver bars, has made the British unparalleled in power, as the arcane craft serves the empire's quest for colonization. Can powerful institutions be changed from within, or does revolution always require violence? That is the question. I have heard this is big brain energy, so that's intimidating, but I've also heard it is absolutely amazing and beautiful, and hopefully it will teach me some words besides amazing. That is a lot of books. Some I may get to, some I may DNF. We don't know. But if you stay tuned, you'll be sure to find out. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like this video. I feel like anytime I do that, I feel like Captain America when he's making those educational videos.
As a soldier and as an Avenger, I've seen some pretty exciting things. But you know what's really exciting? Reading.
Well, with that being said, respect others, respect yourself, and do something amazing with your day. Thanks, bye.